Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday book launch. My name is Marika Albrecht, and I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. And I'm super excited tonight. And we really do have a broad group of people from different places. So it was kind of cool that Cheryl asked about that, because I forget how many people are from someplace else. But Cheryl Dumesnil is author of 3 poetry collections. And the one we get to celebrate tonight is What Is Left to Say by Lyre Press. The other books are Showtime at the Ministry of Lost Causes. My God, does she nail the titles? And In Praise of Falling, University of Pittsburgh Press. Poetry books have won the Agnes Lynch Starrett Poetry Prize and Golden Crown. Oh, just a reminder to mute as you come in, guys. Dumesnil's other literary pursuits include a memoir, and again, listen to this title, Love Song for Baby X, How I Stayed Almost Sane on the Rocky Road to Parenthood. Tattoos on Writers, Writers on Tattoos, co-edited with Kim Addonizio, and We Got This, which was solo mom stories of grit, heart, and humor. Fabulous book. We got to celebrate that on one of the Thursday book launch. A once upon a time creative writing professor and a longtime freelance writer. She recently launched an Act 3 career. And listen to this, guys, as a hospice social worker, I can't imagine someone better prepared to be present, because I think so much of your poetry is really about fully seeing people and fully being present. So I just am glad you have an Act 3, and if you ever have an Act 4, I want to know. We'll just be blown away. We're going to spotlight you. I apologize that you just get a photograph, but it is one of my favorite photographs of me. My camera isn't working. Cheryl, thank you so much for agreeing to this. And I really want to welcome you to our Thursday. Let's celebrate What Is Left to Say.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. It's exciting to see some familiar faces, and always even more exciting to see lots of new faces, and so fun to hear where y'all are from. So here's what the book looks like. And this is actually my first celebratory reading from the book. I know that Marika had asked me if I would please tell the story of the cover of the book, so I'll do that briefly. The photo on the cover is a photo that I took. It was a photo that I took on a drive from California to Texas. My mother-in-law died unexpectedly on Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. And Christmas morning, my wife woke up and said, I had a dream that instead of driving to Texas or flying to Texas, we drove to Texas. And at the time, there was this big COVID flare up, and there were problems with the airline industry, and it just would have been chaos to fly. But more importantly, like, how often do you have an opportunity to make your spouse's dream come true? So I said yes. And the next day we were off and we were driving to Texas and back. And it was just a beautiful, meditative, reflective drive, just the two of us. And there's a lot of open space between here and Texas. So we were seeing all of these signs, and some of the signs were like, guns, next exit, or knives, next exit, snake things, next exit. And I don't know what that was. Men's things, next exit, women's things. And they were all in the same color scheme that you see on the sign on the book. But we drove past one that was clearly a billboard that was pieced together by pieces of broken signs. And I snapped a picture of it while we were driving by at 85 miles per hour. And when I was looking for an image that went with the title of the book, but then also kind of went with the vibe of the book, that was the image that stood out to me. So it ended up on a book cover. So that's the story Marika asked me to tell. I'd like to start this reading with the poem that I thought would be the first poem in the book. And it came from this idea that I heard at the end of a yoga class when I was super relaxed and open to really receiving information. And the idea that I heard was, you are the one who has been with you all along. And I thought about that for a while, because I think about those sort of pieces of ourselves that we carry within ourselves that maybe we lose touch with, that sort of thing. But that idea that there is a you who has been with you all along stuck with me. So that idea ended up churning this poem. Return. The doctor has removed my femur and carried it to a table across the room. I am awake, but not in pain. The doctor is a white coat turned away from me. I hear a sound not unlike the buzz of a tattoo gun. Above me hang the usual floodlights encased in steel. In their curved reflections, my leg is a coin purse snapped open, a gaping mouth crayoned red. That time will never come again is a song the radio sings as the doctor returns, holding my bone like a majorette's baton, rotating it to reveal an image she's carved. The teenager I once was, sitting beside Emily Dickinson's grave. There's the boiled wool coat I wore all year, my scuffed black boots. Forever is composed of nows is the song the doctor hums as she snaps my bone in place. There's the acorn I left on the tombstone. Here's the prayer I whispered to the leaves. So at first I thought that was going to be the first poem in the book. And then as the book evolved and the world fell apart in ever greater ways, it seemed like not the first poem necessarily. So the book ended up being a collection of poems of witness, poems of grief, poems of hope, poems of argument at times, and fight songs for maintaining a sense of hope and wholeness, no matter what's going on around us. So the first poem is one of those poems of witness. Through. The river is frozen. We are skating down the center. Horrible things are happening on the banks, on both sides. Grab my hand. Terror is vapor rising off rocks, off trees. I'm not looking. I'm blurring my peripheral vision. Keep going. I'm focused on the spot ahead where perspective narrows the river until the banks kiss, the vanishing point. Come on now, grab my hand, grab anyone's hand. I don't know where we'll be when we get there. The next poem I'm going to read is made up of sections, and I'll read some of the sections. I'm going to skip around. The poem's called Americana, and it's made up of these little sort of lyrical moments that reflect a state of the union as I was seeing it at the time. 1, cross stitch. The crow's call retreats into its throat, and trees rescind their chlorophyll, and the red lights withdraw their stains from the curtains, and nothing remains but that ghost of a leaf, a bit of brown lace slicked to a shiny black boot. 2, folk song. What is left to say when lies have removed our tongues? Not a hint of sweetness in the milk seeping from the cut fig stem. 4, drum corps. The cardinal dives into her own reflection, defending her territory, mistaking self for enemy. Again and again, whole body collisions, pounding the sheet glass like a bass drum, while the growing crowd shouts, someone stop her or she'll break her neck. 5, barn dance. Today's caller takes the shape of a child who emerged from the fault line after the earthquake everyone knew would come. Her cobweb teeth, her leaded eyes. She carries a lambskin scroll we all need to read, but we're busy tallying our damages, waiting for the underwriter while the hold music drones. So I often find myself in a position of hearing an argument, hearing a contradiction embedded in a more public argument, not a personal one. And I just want to get at that contradiction and say something about it. So I find more and more often I'm turning to poems to do that. So this poem I wrote in answer to the question, but who do you want as your neighbors? The one who made her scarf into a baby sling and carried her toddler 300 miles on foot. The one who salvaged 4 planks from a lean-to, turned a bed sheet into a sail and called it a boat. The one who filled the babies' bellies with songs about the food they could eat when they got there. The ones who crossed the ocean in a 51 Chevy pickup fastened to oil drum pontoons. The ones who lashed plastic bottles to a grid of bamboo stalks and christened it hope. The one who poured his last drops of water between his sister's chapped lips. The ones who whispered, keep going, almost there, a few more days. The one who taped the soles of her broken shoes on a stranger's bleeding feet. The one who made room on the crowded train roof for more ones. The ones who traveled together because we're safer that way. The ones who made mattresses of their bodies so their children could sleep, who ignored the rocks gouging into their backs by counting innumerable stars. Spanish lessons. The flyer tacked up in the break room reads, know your rights, in English and Spanish. How do you say, do you have a warrant signed by the judge? How do you say, tell them nothing? How do you say, I will call for help? Alfonso's tomato plants, grown from seeds his abuela sent, flourish in the soil between our homes. How do you say, I will water them while you're away? How do you say, when you slice one open, the whole of us bleeds? So I try to exercise the belief that we are more connected than we are divided, and to celebrate the connections that we have to each other. Because if you listen to the rhetoric about connection and division, and then you live your individual life trying to connect with people, then you can create a different reality. And the poems that I write, I hope, are poems that can bring people together and help people feel a little less isolated and separate. So this poem is called Today's Sermon. It has 2 references in it that I want to clarify. One is Cock and Bull, which refers to a brewery, and then Emerald Bay, which refers to part of Lake Tahoe, which is a natural lake that stretches across the border of California and Nevada. Today's sermon is Cock and Bull beer caps under the picnic table, and the mountain jay cussing out the ground squirrel, and the ancient lake holding boulders like secrets. Is cigarette butts wedged between pavers leading to the portalet above Emerald Bay? Is the woman crouched behind the tour van while sobbing loudly in the universal language for I'm afraid of something I do not understand? Is a speedboat circling the island like a scalpel excising a tumor? Is the child's bare arms in a 30-degree breeze and her father cupping his hand around the match? Is the rock that told my palm, when you learn to love what is ugly, only then will you find peace? Is last year's charred pines standing sentry on the mountain, and a master colorist painting more blues than I can name? So in this book, there are some poems that came to me, and they're a little more directive than what I would normally write. And I resisted that at first and thought, okay, this is just one for the journal. This isn't one for anybody else. But they kept coming, and I thought, I was getting this feeling that I needed to honor that. There was a reason for it. And if I didn't honor it, then I was kind of putting a stopper in my own throat. So this is the first of those poems that came through that scared me a little bit because it was different from what I usually do. Use your voice, the stones said, their amber glow, the only light in the infinite dark. They unzipped her throat, removed a clay bird, and placed it between her teeth. May you feel loved by something greater than yourself. May you find purpose to drive you forward. May you burn pain as fuel to grow beyond your worst fears, she sang to anyone who would listen. So I'd like to read a couple of love songs that I wrote for my wife, because it's always a good idea to read love songs you wrote for your wife. The first one is called A Dissertation on Quantum Entanglement as a Love Song. I am not a physicist. I am not a scientist. I'm fascinated as a layperson by this concept of quantum entanglement, which in the most basic and probably inaccurate lay terms is that when particles interact with each other and become entangled, even when they are far apart, when something happens to one, it affects the other. They can't be described without each other. Doesn't that sound like a love song through a poet's view of science? I whispered your name in a napkin, crumpled it into my palm, and opened an empty hand. I poured our story in a coffee mug and buried it in the weeds behind the park bench. A love so secret I refused to tell it even to myself. I dreamed we kissed in the cafeteria line while the steward looked away. I sang you loudly in my empty car, mountain storm slicking the roads. Stay home, the ocean who never lies told me, so I did. Runner, I imagined my words becoming the beat in your ears. I dreamed your shoes beneath my bed, your wet paint tenderness, your shimmer like water held at the brink of overspilling the cup. The sun, who is always right, aimed her compass point at my chest and said, wait, you'll be amazed. Years gone, your scent woven through the cables of a thrift shop cardigan. Your words, I wish you well under the changing colors of a sourwood tree, arrived not like a dam burst, more like a rhythm I had never noticed pulsing in my throat. So as someone of middle age and someone who's been working in different capacities with a hospice agency for the past 4 years, you can understand why I have a tendency to imagine goodbyes and endings and wonder what they might be like. So that's where this poem came from. Scatter. How many have told me when they turned the urn upside down, the wind refused the ash, blowing their beloveds back home? Enough for me to promise love when it happens. I will not close my eyes, but open my mouth to lift what's left of you off the breeze with my tongue. Open. How the honeybee flies ever more frantically against the screen this morning. How the one star casts its light 93 million miles to touch your face. This is what I'm talking about. The love that tries all your life to find you. Open the sash. Sunlight and shadow shivering across your unmade bed. So I mentioned that some of the poems in the book would fall under the category fight songs, survival songs. This is one of those. What you must believe. As a mound of dust and a mouthful of spit is to a brick, as that one spit and dust brick is to a wall, is to a shelter for a family fed by one pot, hung over a fire tended all day and all night too. This, my love, is how you will survive. As a spoon scraping concrete is to escape, no matter how they try to break you. Another one of the arguments that I chose to take on is that idea of that a butterfly is such a beautiful symbol of transformation. And it is. Butterflies are beautiful and they are a result of transformation, but there's something about that that people don't really talk about. So I wanted to put that out in the world in this form of poetry. It ain't pretty. Before the miracle of symmetry and wings, that caterpillar spent days gorging and shitting. Spinning webs, she would climb to the pinnacle underside of a leaf, where she hung herself upside down, then peeled off her skin and liquefied inside a straitjacket of her own making. That's right. Before she released into full bore flutter and grace, what she left behind was a massacre scene. Let the record show, change isn't pretty. And I'd like to end with this poem. It's one of the poems that I hope its action will be to bring people together rather than having people feel further apart or isolated and alone. It's called Instructions for Breaking. Listen, there has always been light. There has always been a congregation of lights. There has always been a place in the dark where we'll meet you. There has always been a handprint pressed into a wall over the prints of those that came before, under the hands of those that will follow, waiting for yours. There has always been, will always be, a voice calling against the cacophony of voices, your name, until you hear it and sing it back to us. Listen, there have always been wing beats and heartbeats and spoons whipping batter in bowls and fists kneading dough and truth as the wind has chosen to tell it, and the tapping of one finger on a desk in the lamplight while everyone else sleeps. Love, you must listen for the coordinates, place and time. When the next gathering begins is always now. Join us or do not, but hear me, you are never alone.
Holy
Thanks for
smokes.
listening.
Oh my gosh. Holy cow. I am almost speechless. Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful reading. Cheryl, thank you so much. And those poems, just pure fire. You were going to have so much fun reading over the chat section and seeing all the lines that several of us would put up simultaneously. And people, you can unmute and ask questions. I'm going to need a minute because my brain was just taken someplace else. Wow.
Cheryl, where are you in California?
I am in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that, then I could center in a little bit more. I'm in Walnut Creek.
I'm in San Jose and I've lived all over the Bay Area. So
yeah, I grew up in San Jose.
okay.
Yeah.
Then I will presumably any local things that you're doing are on your website somewhere. I would love
I will
to
be putting local things on my website. Yes.
Perfect.
Haven't quite
Good.
gotten there yet. Yeah.
Then
Thanks
I
for
will see
reminding
you
me
sometime soon.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
And to buy the book, I've just put the link in again. So whatislefttosay.com is where you could go to. But Cheryl, a lot of us are going to want your autograph. I mean, we're going to want something, that way. I know I do. And so what is the best way to have that happen?
So if you have access to Venmo, which I do, you could Venmo me. And unfortunately, shipping is not free for me. I'm not Amazon, But $20 would cover the book and the shipping. If you Venmo me $20 and in the note you put your address, then I will sign a book and send it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I did have questions because it sounds like this book, morphed, and you talked about ordering them and which poem you thought was coming first. I wanted to know a little bit about your process, because I know you spend a lot of time kind of curating each section, and I just wanted to explore that with you.
Yeah. I make a whole bunch of poems, and then I think, that's a pretty big stack of poems. I wonder if that's anything yet. And then I go to my friend LaDonna's house in the mountains, or I borrow another friend's house that's down by the beach, and I go away for the weekend, and I read and I read and I read and I read and I read, and I wonder if there's something there. And then I'll start something and I'll feel where the gaps are and that kind of thing. I might write some poems to fill the gaps. And then I sit with that for a while. I'm a slow bookmaker. So then, 6 months later, I might take another weekend. Meanwhile, I've been writing poems and rereading it and sending poems out individually for publication and such. So I'll take another weekend away and I'll sit with it. It's the sitting with it part that I think is the most important. And then when I feel like I have something, I'll start submitting it places. If I'm getting nibbles on it, then I'm like, okay, it must be doing okay. If there's like crickets in response to me sending it out, then I'm like, I wonder if this isn't resonating with people. And then I might take another look at it. But if I leave a manuscript for 6 months, I'm always going to have fresh eyes on it and do things to it that I didn't do before. So that's in a nutshell. That's the process.
Thank you so much. If you have a question, or if you just want to sing praises, unmute and jump in. Trying to see if I missed anything in the chat section.
I was too busy making sure that I got to know where you were to say, but the work is, well, it says a lot of stuff, but it's also so beautifully clean. Like the there's the inspiration, and then there's the work that one does to distill it and make it. And that's wow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that feedback a lot.
Wanted to go back to, Americana. I think that was the one that both Karen and I just, like our brains froze up and stopped working. It was just amazing. Like each section, I thought, how? But I did have questions about that. How, that seems like, how did you work with that poem?
Yeah, that one was, I actually had separate poems, and I realized that they were all headed in the same direction. So then I pulled them together and ordered them and reordered them about 1,000 times, and edited them so that they worked side by side. But I realized that as much as they may not sound like angry poems, I expressed a lot of my anger by laying down what was pissing me off in the most stark detail possible. And those were the poems in which I had done that. So those came together. The section I didn't read from is the last section of the book. And the entire back section, it's called Dissolve. And it's a conversation between a speaker and sort of a wise voice that's referred to as Sparrow. That one is also a long sectional poem that goes a lot of places. And that one was more intentional. Like I intentionally created a sectional poem from the very beginning on that one.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, there is no doubt in my mind that I have to read that section now. I'm obsessed. Yeah, if I thought I was fangirl and before, Cheryl, I probably am going to literally start a fan club. That's all I've got to say. And I know we have questions, and I'm just
Can
like,
it be
I
a
got
mutual?
nothing.
Can it be a
Ah,
mutual admiration club? Because I feel
I
the
would be,
same way about your work, and I
I
do
would be
think that
completely
last
honored.
section, yeah, that last section, I think you'll vibe with.
Oh, I
Just
totally
knowing what
have
I
no
know about your work.
doubts. Yeah, no, that one poem that you said was so directive, and you were like, I fought with it and almost didn't do it. I thought, I'm so glad that you listened to that, because it's such a powerful, wise woman voice. I mean, the whole poem itself, I was just like, yes, I felt directly connected to that voice in a very intense way.
Thank
Well,
you.
does anybody have any
Thank you.
questions? Wow. Is everybody stunned? Is that what we've gone into? Yes.
Yeah, I'm speechless. I loved the poem so much. I just gave up typing. I was like, I just can't even put there's so much to love. They're just
Oh,
wow. Yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
That's
I wish Cheryl knew how. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, as this is really my first time bringing the poems out into the world in a verbal way with an interactive audience, I'm like, I feel like Sally Field. They like me. They really like me.
They do. They really do. If you
Yeah.
knew how Karen is never speechless, you would understand that this is a moment that has
Yeah.
never happened in
That's
the years
awesome.
we've been doing this.
It's
But
true.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. It's good to have your socks knocked off and have a moment where you're speechless and just still taking in the turns of phrases that resonated. I mean, I'm going to just go through the ones that people were doing at the same time. They unzipped her throat, holding boulders like secrets. The whole of us bleeds. A lot of us put that at the same time. Poured his last drops of water between his sister's chapped lips. I mean, literally, you're going to see just line after line, Cheryl, that just we just stopped on and held. But I do think people weren't typing at some point because they were just too blown away and wanted to take it in rather than be distracted. And I also align with that as well. Regina, you said you can relate to what Cheryl said with
when
that last poem.
I'm trying to remember why I said that. I think it was related to you talking about your process of kind of seeing a theme kind of emerge, something come together. Yeah, and so I can't remember exactly what you were saying, but I related to it. I should have written something down, but yeah, and I do want to say that I am always I get excited when I hear poets be intentional about addressing things. I mean, and looking at what they're experiencing and putting that forward. My thought was, oh, she's a social justice poet, at least in part, and I have an affinity for poets like that. So
Thank you.
it was a wonderful reading. Wonderful reading.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes. Poet of social justice, a poet, poetry of witness. I think there's very much that, and then, a poet of deep truths and just, this book in particular seems to really bring together all the different roles that you've had in life. In the poems that you read, I thought, yes, this is a multifaceted picture of Cheryl. And the way you see, that's fabulous.
Is there any wonder I ended up being a social worker? Right? That's
None
actually
whatsoever.
the number one preparation for me for being a social worker is poetry. Right? I think for any of the caring professions, the number one way to develop your sense of presence with others, that negative capability that Keats talks about, right? That being able to hold space with ambiguities, all of those things that we need to do when we're working with people who are in difficult circumstances. It wasn't it wasn't the masters of social work that taught me that, right? It's the poetry. As you all know, it helps us pay attention. It helps us hold space in the on the shifting grounds, right? So yeah.
But don't you think that it really kind of is a back and forth? You know, like you say, you learned this through poetry, but aren't there some things that you learn through being a social worker that just kind of reveal themselves in that? I know I'm a college professor, so I know that there are some things that I sometimes didn't even think about until I began to encounter, and I teach at a community college. So you get like the people in the community who really are wanting to change something about. I became much more, you know, aware of certain things. You know, privilege is a thing, and it's not just connected to race. I mean, I think we all have to ascertain that there is something, you know, we have privilege. We, despite who we are, you know, there are different degrees of it and levels of it and types of it. I'm gonna stop talking, but yeah.
And then I'll stop nodding my head. Yeah, it does go both ways. I think, you know, it's funny that you mentioned being a college professor, and at a community college in particular. I taught at a community college. I taught at four-year universities. That was my first job, career one. And absolutely, I was exposed to life through different people's lenses. Reading, I've always read stuff that will expose me to life through other people's lenses, but joining people in their circumstances and helping them find their strengths and holding space for them to grow. Yeah, you see a lot more. It reminds me of Father Greg Boyle wrote the book. I think it's like Tattoos on the Heart, something like that. And it's about the organization that he helped start, the Homeboys something. Yes, Judy knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like Homeboy Industry.
Industries, that's it.
Yeah.
Homeboy Industries. But one of the things that he says is that people show up and they want to volunteer. And the people who come in saying, I want to volunteer so I can change these people's lives, he doesn't want them there. He wants the people there who come in and say, I want to volunteer because it will change my life. Right. So does that resonate with what you're talking about, Regina?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regina, you can join the fan club.
I'm already there. I'm there.
Awesome.
It's a mutual appreciation society, and yes, you are there, Regina.
We'll have the MAS. We'll call it MAS, MAS, Mutual Appreciation Society. That's awesome. We can take a moment just to say thank you so much, Cheryl, and we will head into open mic. Awesome. I have Cal. I have you written down first, so I will come to you. You're on. Cal, you got to unmute. Cal, are you having some computer problems? Why don't I come back to you? And we'll try again.
It's called Winter Camp, Sussex County, New Jersey. Can you hear me okay?
Now we can. Yes.
The title is, you can.
Yes.
You're good.
The title is Winter Camp, Sussex County, New Jersey. Winter Work Party, Camp Kennetawapek, Boy Scouts, 1953. Steep old dirt road iced over, so we walked up, stuck bus sliding down towards a ditch. Stopped long enough to jump off. Fog created a 20-foot radius, a pearl around us. Gray afternoon, muffled sounds, almost like in snow. Sounds of unaccustomed teen silence. As branches of trees entered the pearl, We passed, never seeing their trunks, I remember. Strange. Long, long time, us kids wordlessly walking. Half an hour in that beauty, that other world. Thank you.
Thank you. That beauty, that other world. It's lovely. Karen, I'm coming to you.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is a weirdo poem. I thought that I wrote it in response to this really strange oracle card that I pulled the other day. And then for some crazy reason, Brian and I stopped channel surfing and landed on the Republican, I don't know if it was a debate debacle, whatever the thing was that was on the other night. And this poem, I think, maybe turned into that. I'm not sure. Anyway, this is Hallucinating Pops. Why stand squarely mirroring the pointing of a finger into another man's mouth? Onlookers are aghast. The yellow coin of the moon, which could be the sun, is full of itself just now, when a flower behind the ear is a touch of whimsy incongruent with face paint. The angry eyes have it here. Why draw attention to the hole in your head, which may at just about any given moment spill nonsensical rhetoric from its abyss? What seems in the distance like the opening to a cave could be a keyhole. Green light, go. When yellow is cautious, no sounds like no. Swirling into creating, writing selfish works, eyeing the dress rehearsals after pulling the Gilbert and George Art Oracles card, all of these actors are unknown G's, as in guys and or gals and or gangstas, etc.
I
don't know.
adore you, Karen. Oh no, I love it. Nonsensical rhetoric from the abyss. Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. I love your brain too.
No, it's a scary place.
Well, I will visit gladly anytime you're willing to share. Susanna, I'm coming to you.
Thank you. So I've been writing lately about the impact of mass media on women and young girls. And this poem is about a character in a TV show that was popular when I was a kid. Not popular anymore. I don't know that people know Zorro anymore, but this is about Zorro, my first infatuation. Zorro, masked hero of the people, wears all black, including cape, sombrero, cordobes. Even his horse, Tornado, has a black coat. Zorro is so smart, they will never catch him. He tricks heartless people to defeat them, dictators, corrupt politicians. We need him now. Zorro is so sexy with his sword and whip. I learned it was important to sign my work watching him carve a Z on everything, his enemies too. Zorro lives for vendettas. He leaps from roof to roof. Who would want dull Don Diego in her bed when you could seduce his alter ego, Zorro? Oh, Zorro, slide out of that TV and mix me a drink. Thank you.
Susanna, again, somebody else's whose mind I enjoy. I don't know if Susanna and Cheryl, if y'all have met before, but they, I would definitely encourage ongoing communications because I see resonance. Christy, I'm coming to you.
Okay. So this poem is my first attempt at a mirrored Fibonacci, but it was just a situation that I happened to be present for, whether I wanted to be or not. A mirrored Fibonacci freeze warning. Snow dappled violets outside backyard windows. As I listen to him, bloom fresh driven blows to her leached self-worth. She cries pretty, wordlessly begs my silence until coffee sets bleary-eyed smiles. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, the leech self-worth. Thank you, Christy. Regina, I'm headed your way.
Hi, everyone. Um, this poem is from a manuscript that I actually just put together and just started to submit. And it is inspired by one of my students who, in her introductory post, used a scripture to kind of identify where she is in her life. And the scripture, I was so moved by it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then it turned into a poem that went in a way that I did not expect. So the poem begins with an epigraph. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Psalms 46, verse 5. At daybreak. Everybody is clutching and grabbing, trying to hold on to the fragments of love sparsely scattered throughout a day. She is searching for hers. In between the protruding glass, while the air witnesses and threatens that tear falls will cause her to stumble face first into the shards, piercing her eyes, her heart. Yet she still walks, half knowing of the words and presence of the wise women with and before her, and the God that has kept them. They murmur and then remind from above and around, God is within her, she will not fall. It is again the break of day, and trouble is still troubling. Circles of sin, putting on grins and enticing her to leave what she knows her mothers believed, that in her is a spirit known well to woe, and no ordinary man could've, would've told her that his hands would be so hot and his heart so cold. This story so old that it whirls in like a possessed harbinger screeching within the fellowship of memories, breaking the peace. They say to her, don't count on your own mind. It has been tainted with an unreasonable hope. Tie yourself to sense. And more they say, and then they sing and pray, and she, not afraid enough, walks her own way, while the mothers move unseen around and behind, holding their peace, breath having been long gone. One says to the others something about time, and one of the others says back, give it to her. God is within her. She will not fall, as they wait with an old woman's hope for the breaking of the next day.
Regina, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Trouble is still troubling.
Stays trouble.
I love our I love our open mics. Love our open mics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julian, I'm coming your way.
Let's see. Do I need to unmute myself?
You are perfect. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Tomorrow I will be 86 years old, which makes me probably older than anybody here. Not that that matters, but it's kind of interesting to approach that year. Although it comes kind of in the middle of a decade, and I'll if I make it to 90, I'll be more impressed by that. In addition to this poem's being something about something like that, feeling something like that, this poem has also got a reference to a book that I recommend you read, that Texans like me are very devoted to, a book by John Graves called Goodbye to a River, which I mentioned in the last section. The poem is called Microaggressions. A question crept up your thigh, ran its knuckles up and down your spine, 35 being 45 years down the sinkhole of your history. You knew you crossed a line, but you asked her age anyway. Surprised, but apparently not offended, she answered forthrightly. What the occasion was escapes you now, years later. Perhaps carrying the mixed race label in a society whose fecund racism cycles and recycles had made her tough. Tough and canny enough to read you and know you would feel like a dirty old man if she spoke precisely as she did and chatted you up for a while afterwards. Or maybe not. So that when the woman at the takeout window called you babe, twice when she handed you breakfast you shouldn't eat, and double coffee, then again proffering your receipt, you knew she had no reason to offer you the small endearment, except perhaps your age and regularity at her window. Maybe too she needed some human contact to make her day pass quicker. It was a pleasure you treasured at 75, and half the reason you liked that particular takeout place. Now that you've stopped driving, Now that you've stopped driving, 10 years and 3 strokes later, you tick stopping at the takeout window off a list of pleasures you'll likely never have again. X's off the calendar of your days, now piling up in the boneyard back of your mind. One thing you think it means to be old, and you smile again at your Texan image of old fartdom, probably plagiarized from John Graves. Life in a double wide, on some Brazos bend of the heart, live oak outside with a partly whitewashed trunk, its roots set in a bed framed by an old tractor tire, surrounded by white painted rocks. Enough books to keep you busy, poems to write, no matter whether anyone reads them. That should do it, you think. Where you'll be later, you're not quite ready to contemplate.
Julian, enough books to keep you busy. That should do it, you think. I want to take a moment to say happy birthday.
Well,
and
you're welcome.
if people, yeah, if
Happy
people could,
birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Anybody a good sing? Well, Regina's a good singer. And we could sing happy birthday real quick, and then we'll do our last 2 open mics. We'll do it in
I love
advance for good
that.
luck. All right. On the count of 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday
to
you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday, dear
Julian.
Julian.
Happy
birthday to you. That's awesome.
And many more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sure I'll be back next year.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And this will be on tape, so you can play it on days that you want to hear singing that is a unique approach.
Okay. Okie doke.
Jamala, I'm coming your way.
Then I will stay unmuted.
You're good.
Julian, if I have as much insight about life when I'm your age as you do, I will feel like I've run a good distance.
Oh my.
It was beautiful. Okay, so this is called, I took a generative poetry class with Susie Q. Smith this spring, and this was a prompt out of that class, having a dialogue with your grief rather than, process it, put it away, have a conversation with it. I wound up ranting at it instead, but that's okay too. So, invitation to grief. Come to the ocean at Monterey, please. on a winter's day. It will be wicked cold. Come naked anyway. I want to understand all of you. Want to wash us all over in the water. Let breakers push us off our feet, then conquer the undertow of the riptide. Or else be swept out to sea and drowned, to resurrect as something new. Brown pelicans will swoop over us. Seals dance in the water, ignoring us. See tiny shorebirds scurry back and forth, busy, not noticing us. We do not matter to the tapestry of life, are only one creature among many creatures. Perhaps we will come out of the water with a banquet, built together on driftwood fire, of harvested salt-rich superfood greens and accepted bounty of shellfish that died to feed us. I read this into the wind, knowing you can hear me, being everywhere and nowhere. Take on a body, brown like me, with too much unruly hair, and come. Crystallize yourself out of the wind. Soften and warm into life. Speak with me. Explain the riddles of absence, hunger, need, where there is plenty all around, an ocean of plenty. And if you don't come, the cold is bliss too. So I tell you, I will practice feeling bliss in freezing. I tell you, do not mask the presence, imminence of that bliss with absences, losses that mean at the very core, there are things good enough to miss, worth the pain. Do not dare try to make me forget this. When you come, I shake. Wind, no doubt, or possibly awe, knowing you have more power than I. But knowing also the ocean will feed salt life into me if we quarrel. Thank you.
Ah, just gorgeous. Thank you. There is so much to that. I was writing down stuff that, yeah, please check the chat.
I will
Shamala.
do.
That was gorgeous. Thank you so very much.
Just 1 second to say what Cheryl said about poetry and processing illness and so on. And I was very ill last year. The poetry saved my life. I mean, you can be ill and you can get physically better, but then it leaves you a whole lot of stuff to do, and you have to do that to be well, because none of us is ever in a perfect body. And having that reconciliation, poetry is just a wonderful tool. So
It is a beautiful gift, and boy, you just shared it with us. So that's even more lovely. It's the process you have in relationship to your art and to your craft. And then it's also this beautiful thing that you just shared in the community and touched. It's powerful. Thank you. Laura, you are our final person for open mic. I'm coming to you. There you are.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. I've missed it. Been a while. This poem's called Childhood Idol. Rusting swing set in the backyard, grass worn to dust at the foot of the slide. That slide reached to the sky to your 4-year-old eye. An impossible height. And yet your brother threw that cat down the gleaming, sun-hot metal hill into your arms, all claws and screaming fur. Learn to climb the gate to the alley, but 2 houses down, behind you, is the witch. She will yell as you pass. You can't even walk on her sidewalk without incurring her wrath. I read your poems and revel at how you stole my childhood with your candy cigarettes and distant mother. Thank you.
Got so flustered I didn't unmute myself. Laura, holy smokes. Thank you so much. All claws and screaming fur. Ooh. Well, once again, open mic rocked. Cheryl, you were amazing and so good to be in y'all's good company. I appreciate the fact that y'all have let me have technical difficulties the past couple of weeks. I'm just glad to be here, and I hope y'all stay well and that I see you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Malika.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Pleasure. Bye. Don't
Bye-bye.
forget to reach out to Cheryl if you want a copy of the book.
Yep.
I thank y'all.
That-
Thank you, Malika.